perspective, that is fine, but would you be more concerned if it's a native app as compared to a web app? Would you be, Rajiv, do you have a perspective on that? Or Ajit, do you have a perspective on that from a technology perspective?
See, if you look at what has happened over a period of time is that the best-in-class user experience is always being delivered by the native apps. That has been the tradition and that has been the history. Now with the advances in web technologies like HTML5, we are getting into neither native nor web. We can get into something what is called as hybrid apps as well. Obviously there is whenever we have the data which is being stored on a device which can be easily, stolen or misplaced. I mean, that is the risk that what we are talking about here, which is different than your typical web content or typical desktop or client server based applications. Having said that, if we do take care, if we do architect our solutions where, as she said, data has to be encrypted, store the minimum data which is being required for these native apps. And typically where the industry is heading towards, we will get into more or less the similar user experience what we used to get with the native apps, with the hybrid apps or with the web apps with the advances in technology. So the way I look at it is that obviously it is evolving at a very rapid pace, and we have to find the ways where we can really, deliver the value what we have to look at. And obviously we have to draw a line between how much risk we would like to take and what is the value that what we are going to get out of it.
So I mean, if I rephrase the question, would the app architecture and the app technology be a valid consideration if you want to have a safe experience? From a risk management perspective, if risk is an important consideration, would technology and its deployment be one of the considerations when you develop the app?
Yeah, obviously that is the one of the most important consideration that we need to think of, and we looked at the iceberg. Whenever we are actually exposing our enterprise data, now on the another channel which is not the traditional channel of desktops, we have to look at how best it is going to be delivered in a secure way. What are the different controls that we would like to have? At the same time, if you look at the data and the way apps have been designed for your traditional web, we have to literally think totally different, because those having the small form factors and all that. So there are a lot of consideration in terms of what is the data volume that what we are looking at there, what is the encryption we are looking at there. So application, and as I said, that mobility cannot be just a standalone architecture. It has to be well integrated with the overall architecture that you are laying down for your enterprise. For example, if you have to really access the data, then we have to think of the way industry is looking in the API way, where you have to have data available easily from your legacy system. So these are the important considerations that we need to think, we have to take care of.
Rajiv, coming back to the picture of the iceberg, where the tip of the iceberg is probably the user experience, and thanks for that a very graphic representation of a very complicated concept, and the size of the iceberg below the water, which is the entire infrastructure. How do you as a CIO or a CTO navigate this challenge? How do you ensure that you move forward incrementally, you give the mobility experience, you adopt mobility, knowing fully well that you do not have all the infrastructure, yet taking baby steps and ensuring that you are on the journey and moving forward?
Yeah, so it's difficult to answer that, but let me try it. Or at least what we are doing is, as you said, baby steps, but not necessarily all the time. So at some time we have to have the courage to take a big step or a leap of faith. And this is what we are, let's say we have not done, but we are in the middle of doing it. One of the key, I would say, aspects to consider is this whole architecture topic. In most of the practicing organizations like ours, when IT is actually not a core, we are more in manufacturing, and we are like, we tend to ignore the architectural aspects of solutions, and we tend to fall into the trap of giving a point solution or reacting to a certain event or a certain requirement. And it does need a lot of courage to stall the whole, to slow down things and say, hey guys, we need to set our house in shape before we are able to build the structure. So all I can tell you is that last year we did not deliver anything to the business. We said, sorry, we need to get our house in shape first, we need to set the foundation right, and we will only deliver what is necessary to keep the ship floating and not sink. But this year we have the foundation in place, and now we would be able to build as tall a structure as we need to.
Good. So Gauri, how do you view this? You know, it's you have all the technology people sitting on one side and a legal brain on the other, and we generally, though we know technology is imperfect, we do have expectations of perfections when we refer to the legal system, and knowing fully well, and the utopian dream of like having a common regime related to data privacy, security, legal, which I don't know whether it will ever happen in this world. So given these challenges, and at the same time the word mobile app itself denoting a lot of cross-border flows, how do you look at this challenge? And I do not see any perfect solution for this, but what would be a defensive way of approaching that? I know when I drive, there are a lot of madmen around me. I can't do anything to their driving, but I can drive defensively. So from that perspective, how can organizations be defensive and navigate this entire maze associated with data privacy, regulations, laws, etc.?
I think that's a very good question. And while they were, discussing about various architectural issues and all that, that's what's coming in my mind. Because what is happening today is nobody is independent. Everybody is dependent on somebody's technology. Everybody is dependent on somebody's app. When Tejal mentioned that, okay, I have a mobile where I'm trying to swipe through my biometric, and then only I'll reach the the banking, whatever that application. The question is, if there is a breach, right, who is liable? So that becomes a question, and in what we call as a concept, what is called as contributory liability. Is everybody liable? Then who's liable to what extent? Right? So in this scheme of things, as the example that you gave, that if there is an accident in this particular situation, am I liable, or the people, when I'm driving in straight line, but I did not have a quick reflex action to the thing that was happening next to me, and because of that, have I contributed? Right? So this becomes a challenging issue, and therefore even in the data privacy law, the way the IT Act also, it is to do with the negligence. Right? If there is a breach, have you been negligent? And luckily our law recognizes that concept. It is not a strict liability offense as we call it. When you say strict liability, if something has happened, you are liable. Luckily our data privacy law says, have you been negligent? And in that context, what you need to do is, have you tried to do all that was possible to be done, including making your employees aware of the security policies and procedures? Have you conducted the training sessions? So all that, your governance, coming back to the governance, was your governance sufficient enough to say that you were not negligent? So what is that threshold? Now that's not something law can determine, right? That's something, suppose an industry had given, there is somewhere in the world, and today we are not talking about India anymore, somewhere in the world a particular security process was possible, why did you not engage, employ it? Right? So today you cannot be looking, just within your well. You have to look at what is available, what is the best case available, and have you tried to match that. So, when we from a legal perspective will look at negligence, we will look at all these aspects.
So where is the world moving, because there is a lot of movement towards the new data privacy principles that the EU is going to adopt, I believe by 2017 or 2018. So, and the European Union is generally seen to be the fountainhead
And the most strict.
Yeah, and which has to an extent determined what the laws globally are. So if you look at the laws globally, they more or less borrow the concepts from European Union. So looking at what European Union plans to do you see in the Indian context any changes that are likely to happen?
Yeah, I think even today if you see, the Indian data privacy law is not fully to the extent, for example, we don't have a data breach notice. We don't have a any regulator who's monitoring this. Today it is completely self-governance. The only issue that arises is when you have been negligent, right? So, but in my view, the way things are likely to move is more to set the principles. If you see what EU also is trying to do is set the principles. And if those data privacy principles have to be followed. So I think because today it is not possible to say that, okay, today ISO 27001. Today the law in India will say that, but tomorrow something else comes up. Do we have the process where the law can change so quickly? So it's always best, in my view, in the in the current scene of things, to have the principles in place and try to adhere to those principles, rather than saying this technology, that technology. We had the similar issue for the digital certificate, right? For ages we kept on saying that digital signature is the only valid signature for the purpose of electronic contracting. Now they have recognized electronic signatures after so many years. Even then that is not clear. So somewhere we need to probably speeden up the process of catching up with the technologies. Somewhere the legal fraternity is far behind.
Okay.
So interestingly, just to add, we have very contradictory situations in our business. For example, many of our customers come to us and say that, okay, we would like to build a mobile app and this is our mobility roadmap and all that. And we work for certain customers in BFSI segment who doesn't even allow our associates to carry their cell phones in the premises.
True.
So at one end, the certain customers are moving ahead at a rapid pace, while at the same time the traditional businesses are still thinking that is it the right media to deliver the business.
Exactly.
Very true.
And if you look at the mobile app landscape, it's pretty convoluted. So you have a mobile app creator, okay, who could be a OTT player who's creating an app and giving you. You have a service provider for whom the app is being created. Then you have the store on which it is being hosted. Now who's liable in all this case? And then there is an end consumer who's going to download that app, accept all the conditions that come when you install an app saying, yeah, I'm going to access your XYZ data on your mobile device, and then use it in some form or the other. Now who's liable in this case? Is it Apple Store, who's rather is the most advanced one in terms of having strict rules in place before it tests every app before it puts on its app store? Or is it Google? Because Google comes with a totally different mindset. It says, I am open to all. I want the reach to be maximum. So anybody can come and place an app on my Google store. So there is no security at that level. Then there is the OTT player or these small-time app developers who come in. And the race is, I want to put up an app today. The next version comes probably in a week or so. And you do not have a proper testing mechanism in place to say, find the bugs in that app which is going to access your data. And the consumer, if you see, is totally eye-washed with the offers and promotions that you're getting. So you put a Hotstar app by Star TV. Okay, you're going to get this match probably free. Imagine a bunch of students who do not have access to television in hostels. They're going to download this app and probably watch that map throughout their day. Now who knows what is going to happen with the data that is being accessed? Are you accessing the history of that particular student from the app in terms of purchases or anything else? Nobody's bothered. So where is the liability remaining?
So
and there's no governance there.
This model is itself very complicated. I mean, try to relate it to a very simple scenario. You want a desktop at home. You go and buy probably a Dell desktop. I'm just taking some name. It could be any desktop. On that you install Microsoft operating system and maybe some third database. Now you are totally under control, and Dell and Microsoft in that specific environment, they do not mistrust each other. But now we have a scenario where there are multiple players, and as you rightly pointed out, there is an app store that doesn't know whether it should trust the developer, who doesn't know whether it should trust the hardware vendor, who doesn't know whether they should trust the operating system, and that's the maze that we are still trying to navigate. So it creates really complex dynamics in this entire environment. The other thing that is happening in the mobile world is that, as I said, mobility is not an isolated phenomenon. It works along with cloud, it works along with analytics and a host of things. And today, Anand Deshpande in the morning mentioned that if you have the right initiatives which include a basket of all these, you can save about 30%. And no organization in this world is brave enough or dumb enough, whatever, to say that I can forego this 30% saving. So everybody wants to save, and whether security people like it or not, they are moving to the cloud. As CIOs and CTOs, how do you see the challenge? Because now, in the present scenario, I hosted my mail in my environment, I had my Exchange, I had my logs, they used to flow into my SIM,